Blessed to be part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to our friend Lars Larson, the Lars Larson Show. Of course, you can catch him weeknights 6 to 9. You can catch him anytime, LarsLarson.com. Lars, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers go out to the families of those involved in the stabbing that happened. This evil person who apparently didn't like being kicked out of an apartment where he had lived for a short time and decided to take his vengeance out on children. I hope they throw the book at him.
Well, and he'll be arraigned later on today, and thank you, Lars. We appreciate that. Obviously, that is one of the big stories that we're talking about here locally throughout the Treasure Valley and, of course, throughout the nation. When we take a look at one of the slower weeks of the year, we've got, the president continuing to put pressure on Congress. The trade war is going on. What's the week look like for you, sir?
Well, the week, first of all, I'm looking forward to with families celebrating America's Independence Day. I don't like calling it the 4th because it's not just another day of the year or another day of another month. It's the day we celebrate our independence. And we have a lot more to celebrate this year because America's free speech rights have been strengthened by decisions by the Supreme Court last week. We have a president who puts America first, not second or last, the way the last president did. And we have, I think, very good news for conservatives as we head toward the fall. But we also have some Democrats who are showing their true stripes. You've noticed, you might have noticed, I know not with Idaho's 2 U.S. senators who are very good, but with other senators who are demanding somehow that the president's latest Supreme Court pick, whoever it happens to be, he's going to announce it in a week, be somebody who vows to keep certain court decisions in place regardless. Well, Kevin, I've been a reporter a long time, and one of the first things I learned about talking to candidates for judge or people who are already sitting on the bench is no responsible judge ever says, if a case like X comes before me, I will decide it in the following fashion. Because the whole point of a judge is to look at the facts before him or her, consider the law and consider the facts before you, and make a decision. And announcing ahead of time how you would be likely to decide any case, even if it's a case where the issues are particularly important to me or to you, could be a Second Amendment case, could be a Fourth Amendment case, for a judge to announce ahead of time during confirmation, this is how I'd be likely to decide a case involving, say, the Second Amendment or involving abortion, would be highly inappropriate. And I think it's inappropriate even to ask the question when it comes to judges. With any other politician, you can ask them what their position is on abortion. But a judge's job is to be an impartial arbiter of what the law is. And these Democrats are acting like idiots. They're also acting like idiots because they say, but Roe versus Wade is Supreme Court precedent. Kevin, at the risk of insulting the court, the Supreme Court of the United States has made some colossally stupid decisions. And you don't have to look back that far. My favorite is Dred Scott, which said essentially that people with black skin were slaves. And we upheld that in Dred Scott. It was the law of the land, passed down by the Supreme Court. And we look back on that and say, can you believe that the Supreme Court ever said that if you had black skin, that your ability to hold public meetings, express your free speech rights, or advocate for a candidate for office were simply not the same as those of white people? But that was precedent. There was one that's another favorite of mine called Buck versus Bell. In Buck versus Bell, the court upheld the forced sterilization of people with intellectual disabilities. And they said, this is actually Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. And that was a Supreme Court precedent. I hope that someday my little granddaughter, who just turned 2 a couple of months ago, will ask me, Grandpa, is it really true that at one point the Supreme Court upheld the right of a woman, this might be when she's 18 or 20 years old, that any woman for any reason whatsoever could simply kill her baby while it was unborn because it was inconvenient? I'll say, yeah, they did decide that, but that's now on that list that includes Dred Scott and Buck versus Bell and Korematsu, the one that allowed us to lock up American citizens simply because they were of Japanese ancestry, or Plessy versus Ferguson, which upheld separate but equal when it came to schools and and places like that. I mean, there's a whole list of really colossally stupid things the Supreme Court has done. And I think Roe versus Wade will join them someday. But asking one of the nominees, how would you decide Roe versus Wade, and will you promise to stick with that, would be no more sensible than asking somebody back in the day, we've decided that black people don't have any rights. Will you stick with that one? Which was at one point Supreme Court precedent, just like Roe versus Wade. So it makes my skin crawl to hear politicians say, we must demand that whoever Trump nominates will uphold a particular decision. One, it's inappropriate to ask. It'd be inappropriate for them to answer. Two, not every Supreme Court precedent is one you're proud of.
Our great friend Lars Larson joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So, Lars, politically, though, this is what we've been dreaming about forever.
Oh,
and the idea of getting another Supreme Court justice on, and if the president gets reelected, you got to look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg and a couple others. We could have a permanent conservative majority for quite some time.
Well, and I wish Ruth Bader Ginsburg as a human being a long, healthy life. I also wish she would retire. And it may be that with two nominations under his belt, that Bader Ginsburg will look at the tea leaves and say, do I want to stick around for another 2 years of this Trump term, and then 4 more years that I believe the president will win handily, and she may decide to hang it up the way Kennedy decided to hang it up. And at that point, Trump gets 3, and he would become the first president, as I understand the history, to ever have chosen 3 United States Supreme Court justices. And if he gets a second term, well, 3, maybe 4. And Kevin, that means that the Supreme Court will look at the Constitution as a document that you should go with what the original document was meant to say, and not decide that the Supreme Court, that the Constitution is like a piece of silly putty that you can mold into whatever society says it is at this point in time. I think we'd all be in big trouble if we ever decided that the Supreme Court was, as Obama used to say, a living document, meaning it says one thing today, but next week it may say something completely different. This country is a great country because we have that bedrock foundation of the Constitution. The minute you say that it can be changed like the Boise City Council changes ordinances when things change, means that all of our rights are in trouble.
It does make you wonder, but the idea, and look, during the 8 years of Obama, that was tough for everybody, Lars. It seems like we were in exile, and the idea that Hillary Clinton looked like she was going to win, and now all of a sudden, the president's here running in the midterms against the blue wave. All of a sudden, he could have 2 Supreme Court justices. He could have the economy revving, perhaps continuing to hold the Senate and the House.
Yep.
These are good signs that, a couple of years ago, it looked like a very different America.
Well, we are headed, and not just it could be revving, it is revving, Kevin, not to correct you, but we already, the Fed released numbers last week that said that the United States economy is clocking along at a 4.8% growth rate. And I really can't emphasize enough how significant that is, because for a lot of folks, you work a job and you say, well, this GDP stuff, how does that affect me? When we were told under Obama that the best we could ever hope for was 2%, and Obama, a 2% growth rate. And under Obama, the actual average for 8 years was well under 2%. It was closer to 1.7. And you say, what do all those numbers mean? Well, when the economy grows twice as fast, and it's already growing twice as fast under Trump as it grew under Obama, and if we hit 4.8 or 4.9%, we'll be growing 3 times as fast. When the economy grows 3 times as fast, it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, an electrician, a truck driver. Twice or 3 times the growth means twice or 3 times as much economic opportunity. It means that if your company is adding drivers, if your company is adding workers, the opportunities for average American workers grow dramatically with that. And it may be a chance to finally shrink the welfare state by adding work requirements. And I know Kevin is pretty sure as I'm sitting here, it's 8:15 in the morning. For the folks that are already at work in Boise, those are the folks with jobs. For them, I think that it is an insult in an economy like this to not tell people who are able-bodied and sound of mind, if you want to take part, if you need a little bit of a hand up, you can do that. But you're not going to live on welfare for the rest of your life. You're not going to depend on the government for a significant part of your life for housing, medical care, food, and everything else. It is possible for you to earn your own living, and if you're capable and you turn to the rest of society and say, you should pay my rent, some or all of it, you should pay my medical care, you should pay my food, that's insulting, and frankly, it's pathetic. Now, again, I'm not talking about children, and I'm not talking about the elderly, but for the 25, 35-year-old person who's capable of doing a job, who says, it's easier to sit back and let somebody else pay my bills. You're pathetic. I mean, imagine telling your parents, hey, Mom and Dad, you make good money. I don't really feel like working hard. Could you just pay my rent and could you just pay for my groceries for me? I think most sensible parents would say, no, not after you turn 18. You're an adult. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to the people around you, and frankly, you owe it to society to go out and contribute. And again, I'm not talking about people who are physically or mentally disabled, although I know people who are physically disabled who still go out and earn their own living. And if they need a hand from time to time, I think society's happy to help them. The people I'm not happy to help are the folks who've decided, I work a part-time job, don't want to put my food stamps at risk, and because I work a part-time job and somebody else is buying my groceries, at least in the states with legalized pot, I got more money to spend on weed. I don't want to pay that, and I would think that any real adult would not want somebody else paying his or her bills.
Our great friend Lars Larson with us. You can catch him at weeknight 6 to 9. Finally, Lars, here at KIDO Talk Radio, what do you make of all these protests over the weekend where some fringe candidate says they want to get rid of ICE, and all of a sudden it's mainstream doctrine in the Democratic Party?
Well, although some of the top Democrats this morning, Kevin, are starting to, say, no, we don't want that. They know that's a loser issue. To tell Americans, and most of us, Kevin, you and I are both subject to lots of rules because of the industry we work in. And if we violate those rules, we go to prison. There are other people listening to this who are working at a job right now, and if they violate the rules, they get slapped with fines, they may go to jail, their company may go out of business. So to have a group of Democrats show their true colors and say certain people should not have to follow the law is crazy. And I hope they stick to that argument. I think this is why some of the top Democrats are now trying to push away from this, because they understand that going into the fall saying, we want to go back to the growth rates of Obama. We want to go back to we'd like to have had a Supreme Court that didn't make the three great decisions made last week. And oh, by the way, certain people within our society should be allowed to violate the laws to benefit them financially. The folks who follow the law, and this is the majority of your audience. I mean, I have a few felons in my audience. You probably have a few felons in yours. But most of the really good felons are people who've committed a crime, they've done their time, and they are anxious to prove to society that they won't do it again, that they'll be good citizens and not go around hurting people or stealing from people. Those are the good ones. The bad ones, the ones who advocate for lawless behavior, if the Democrats want to be the party of lawless behavior, go for it, because I think most of America will reject that in a heartbeat.
Lars Larson, we always appreciate it. Thank you for your kind thoughts on the apartment stabbing here in Boise. We look forward to catching you tonight, sir.
Throw the book at him. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
And, by the way, happy Independence Day.
You too, Lars. Take care.
Take care.
Our great friend Lars Larson. Coming up next, your calls. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
No hate, just love. No hate, just love. No hate, just love. No hate, just love.
A group gathered yesterday at the apartment where the stabbing took place to show support for the refugee community and to demand safety and security. Boise police have said at this time there is no evidence to suggest that this was a hate crime, but they continue to investigate potential leads. Still, this weekend's events have rekindled fears that refugees in this group demonstrating say they feel in our community.
The community here is amazing, but the people, some of them are not accepting, and some of them want hate and want violence. We want justice and we want peace. We want peace for the people. We want to go out in the evening. We want to be normal. We want to act. We want to feel as though we're normal, that we belong here.
And there we have it. Joining us now is the chief of the Boise Police Department, our great friend, Chief Bones. Chief Bones, thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
Wish it were under better circumstances.
Yeah, there's always tough times throughout the weeks and days that go by, but there's those events that are the once in a decade or once in a lifetime, and definitely been one of those weekends for us here in Boise.
Obviously, Chief, you love this community. You serve this community. We've seen violence continuing to rise despite the great efforts of the police department. Where does this rank?
I really do think it's just a complete aberration. It's that one-off that can happen to any city, any community. Obviously, our suspect in this wasn't a member of our community. It wasn't a person who's been here in Boise, somebody that came from the outside and targeted innocents. I don't see it as a reflection of the city. We really do still enjoy, Kevin, one of the safest cities in the country. I don't see that changing the dynamics, but it's a reality of the American culture that we live in today, that this is a risk that any community of any size can face at any moment.
And Chief, you have been such a stalwart of being a part of outreach to every community, to every group. We see you out there being an ambassador for the police department, and this is where those connections certainly help a community and deal with something that is indescribable.
Really, Kevin, it's one of those things that you always try to reach out to those people that would feel least comfortable coming forward to build those relationships with groups that might not feel part. And for police officers, every officer that gets into the career, they do it to protect and help others. And the people that they have that largest care and feeling for are the people that are most vulnerable. So it's one of those things when you see a group or a target, particularly obviously when you see kids that are most at risk and the most vulnerable population we have, that it really is a struggle for us.
Chief Bones with us, KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. Chief, can you take us into how the Boise Police Department reacted and where you are right now? Can you take us to the scene?
Kevin, I got to tell you, I can never be more impressed than I am with our people and the response. It's the chief's got the easiest job in the world when he's got the type of officers with the kind of skill set that we have. And I've gotten report after report after report of people that couldn't believe the professionalism of the officers, the paramedics, the firefighters that responded, how they worked together in a team atmosphere, and how they would just. And I heard the term well-oiled machine twice already. Professionalism I've probably heard 15 times from people. The officers just, they responded and didn't, there was no thinking, it was acting, let's go, let's get this done. And very, very impressive.
Chief, when you take a look at, again, the challenges of policing, we've discussed this for years. Not only do we have officers and shootouts in Boise, but you have the shooting of an officer in Meridian, obviously, Officer Kevin Holtry. It's always on everyone's mind. And again, my thoughts, we have to protect and support the people that protect and serve us. It is changing, and the challenges are increasing.
That is true, Kevin. As I said earlier, society, it's one of those things that we face and is a reality in the world today. And it's one of those things that as police, we can't handle by ourselves. It really takes a unified commitment by everybody in a community to come together, that you realize that it's a part of everybody's role to make the community safe. And that's that whether it's the see something, say something, whether it's the unity of a neighborhood coming together, watching out for each other, watching out for the kids in their neighborhood. It's not living behind a closed door and isolating yourself in your house. It's becoming part of the community that you're in. And there's always ways to become engaged and having a sense of awareness of what's around you. And then just having a sense of, you know what, I've got a little bit of a duty and responsibility here too. Together we can continue to keep our community safe, but it will take a working together, not just a working in segments or just leaving it to the police themselves.
Chief Bones, what about the families? You've been there from the very beginning. How are they coping with, again, as you talked about, just evilness?
Kevin, I mean, it was amazing how nice many of the families I've talked to were, how appreciative they were of the help and response. But I'll be honest, I don't know how they're coping. I don't know how you absorb what has happened, especially for those with the smallest children that were injured the most seriously. That's something that I think is going to take a significant amount of time. Very thankful. We're actually hosting a meeting today where we have multiple groups coming together that have been working to do outreach and get resources to the refugee families involved, to continue that support. We've got them coming together today just to get a plan together so that we can actually be unified in how we develop and approach that. Really, we do believe it's not just the police obviously see the critical moments and the hardest moment of a tragedy when it's all hitting, and it is that chaos. But we also want to see the ability to help people get past that and to carry on in the months and years to come.
Chief Bones, we appreciate it. We know you're very busy. Our thoughts and prayers, not just words, go out to those families and to the police that are dealing with this. Thank goodness that you apprehended the suspects, sir.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thanks to a great community, and most of all for any of my officers, and I know several of them do listen to you. Thanks to everybody that's out there working and has been working through the weekend.
Chief, take care, sir.
Take care, Kevin. Bye.
Bye-bye. Your thoughts next, and as the chief said, to all those folks in law enforcement, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Traffic and weather together, and coming up, we'll get your thoughts. How safe is the Treasure Valley? Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning. More of your phone calls next. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Out to the White House, from your house to the White House. Our own John Decker, Fox News Radio, joins us now to talk a little bit about the president having a big interview over the weekend. John, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yes, the president had an interview with Maria Bartiromo from the Fox Business Network, and on the schedule in terms of what they discussed was the president's upcoming nomination for that upcoming vacancy on the U.S. Supreme Court. So this is something that obviously the president is focused on. He's going to announce who his choice will be 1 week from today. My guess is he's going to do it in a similar fashion to what happened with Neil Gorsuch, which was a primetime announcement in the East Room of the White House.
Well, it seems like the president is willowing the field. Of course, we had the Sunday shows. You had Susan Collins of Maine saying that the president could expand it. She was very concerned. How concerned is the White House with either Democrats in red states or Republicans that may be more moderate when it comes to a Supreme Court nominee?
Well, last time around with Neil Gorsuch, the president was able to get 3 Democrats to vote for Neil Gorsuch, all 3 Democrats coming from red states and all 3 Democrats up for re-election in the midterm elections. So the president hoping to get Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp and Joe Donnelly to support his nominee this time around as well.
Of course, the midterms coming up. Does that help or hinder the administration, John?
Well, the midterms are always a difficult thing for whatever administration is in charge of the White House. Typically, during midterm elections, the party in power loses seats during the midterms, and so that's sort of like the headwinds that the president and his team are facing as they head into the midterms. But the president is going to be doing a lot of travel leading up to the midterm elections outside the Beltway, trying to get his troops motivated, making certain that they go out to the polls. And I think to a certain extent, this vacancy on the Supreme Court, this nomination, is going to be helpful in terms of getting his troops motivated for going to the polls in November.
Oh, it certainly helps on the campaign trail. 2 Supreme Court justices, tax cuts, and the economy's revving.
Well, those are all things the president certainly will tout when he goes out on the road, and so they are all positive things. His approval rating has increased, as you know, over the course of the past few months, especially with his base. So that's a good thing. And, I think that going into the midterms, Republicans feel as good as you can feel about midterm elections. And certainly if you look at certain races, they feel they can even pick off a Democratic seat or two, including down in Florida, where Bill Nelson is running into a tough race from the Republican governor of Florida, Governor Scott.
That would be something, especially considering how much of a toss-up state Florida is. Of course, then you have in Montana Jon Tester, who has beaten the odds a few times. We'll see if Senator Tester can do that again. I know the president is traveling and has traveled west to Montana a few times and looks to do so more as the campaign heats up.
That's exactly right. And so that's one of those particular races that the president is going to certainly have a say. I think that Tester is looking good in that particular race. Not so much Heidi Heitkamp. I think that Congressman Kramer is doing very well in terms of early polling that's come out, and the president's certainly going to, do what he did last week, make some additional trips out to North Dakota to try to help out Congressman Kramer in his effort to unseat Heidi Heitkamp.
John Decker, a busy week this week, or is it kind of slow?
We'll see. No week is ever slow with this White House and with this president. But we have, of course, July 4th in the middle of the week. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of break right there, Kevin. But I think so much focus over the course of the next week or so is going to be on the president and his choice for who will succeed Anthony Kennedy on the U.S. Supreme Court.
John Decker, we appreciate it. If we don't talk to you, happy Independence Day.
Oh, absolutely. You too. Have a great Independence Day, a great 4th of July, and if I don't speak to you, we'll speak real soon, that's for sure, Kevin.
Yes, sir, John. Take care.
Thank you.
Our good friend John Decker joining us. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
This is not who we are. This person is not from here. In fact, the response that I've heard all around town from I had a chance to go to the apartment complex today, spent some time with some of the folks that lived there, some that saw the incident. But people were dropping flowers off and popsicles, and everybody had already started to come out and really embrace these families and these folks, and that's who we are.
Let's go to Adam in Meridian. Thanks for your patience. Good morning, Adam. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah, hey, Kevin. I think a lot of this is a natural due to the area.
Adam? Hey, Adam, you there? Well, we lost Adam. Pro-Life, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Yeah, I haven't heard too much discussion about self-protection in this situation, and I wonder what the apartment building's policy was on firearms. And I think, a person needs to have some ball bearings, a throwing star or a throwing knife or something, even if they're restricted from having firearms. I hate to see those little kids get cut up like that, and people have to, you can't have a policeman everywhere, and so it's ridiculous. We need less policemen, actually, if people were more proactive about their own self-protection, and they're not being so. And I don't hear any of the officials saying that. I didn't hear one of them today saying that. So that's my point. And, if I'm going to go and live in a dangerous neighborhood, I'm going to figure out a way to protect myself. And that must be a dangerous apartment area. I don't know. There are some in Boise. So anyway, that's all I want to say about that, Kevin.
Pro-Life, thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio.
All right. God bless you.
God bless you. Mike Tracy joins us now at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Not bad. And you?
I'm doing great. Just got back late Saturday from the Idaho GOP convention. First, my thoughts and prayers to those families, and I hope everybody recovers. It sounds like the community is rallying around them, which is not a surprise for the people in Boise and Idaho in general. We're a pretty loving and giving and caring community, as evidenced by, one of our great friends, Bill Roscoe, and his team. I suspect that they're reaching out right now, along with a lot of other people. So, I'm glad to hear that so many people are stepping up to help. And it's just sad when those things happen. there's crazy people and bad people in the world, and unfortunately, we can't make that stop. We can only, I think, make it stop, make the really bad things stop after the fact. And I think we do that really well in Idaho by showing the love and compassion that we do.
Well, and that's one thing that I would hope that people understand. Obviously, the nature of the crime is getting national news, but let's not use this to attack Idaho as anti-this, anti-that. As we've seen, you've heard from the chief here this morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Everybody is warm and welcoming. Whether we agree with the refugee situation or not, now is not the time to debate that issue. And yet you have other people using this for their own political advantage, which is unfortunate.
And, Kevin, I have a real problem with people coming in improperly on immigration, but legitimate refugee situations, I've seen them and worked with them when I was with Senator Craig and helped people get out of countries that were in really bad spots, including children that were in Africa that were being targeted in orphanages by thugs in Africa. And we helped kids get out of there and get adopted in Idaho. And this was back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Those kids were legitimately under attack in their own countries. And, and so were their parents. In fact, a lot of the reason they were orphans was because their parents had already been killed by the same thugs. So there are plenty of countries where there are legitimate refugees. We just happen to have a southern border where it has been overly porous over the past 30, 40 years, and with policy that's mixed, that is very frustrating. And I've watched and dealt with the immigration battles for 30 years, and watched Reagan do his amnesty program in '86, and then have watched ever since. And and I worked in agriculture where, agriculture relies heavily on migrant labor. When I moved from Joliet, Illinois to Paul, Idaho in 1970, for the first time ever, I saw migrant laborers, and, but they would come in legally, they would do their work, and then they would go home, and they would send money home to their families, and they would come into the little mom and pop grocery store that I worked in Paul, Idaho, and get their groceries every Saturday. They would get a money order and send it home. And back in 1971, 72, they were sending $2,000 a week back to their families. And that was a lot of money back then. And, it's equivalent to $20,000, $30,000 today. So, I've seen my immigration issue develop in different ways and evolve in different ways, and some positive, some negative. I agree with you. I hope we don't let the refugee situation give this. I would encourage people not to attack the refugee situation, because we do have legitimate refugees in Idaho and in the country that need our protection.
Right.
But I just wanted to mention the GOP convention too. I've been going to them since 1990, and this is by far one of the best that I've ever been to. And it was extremely well run. The Bennett County folks did a great job. And we also saw a real unity there. Congressman Labrador was there. Brad Little was there for the entire time. Russ Fulcher was there.
Yeah, but
as much as he,
back to Congressman Labrador, he seemed a little hurt last week when he said he was going to take issue with the Republican Party for allowing the lies to be told about him. And then, then he warned Brad Little that 63% of the people didn't vote for him. Is that taking one for the team?
Well, I think that it hurts when you lose an election, and I think Raul will eventually he'll get over it, and I think that you can point those statistics out, but the bottom line is with the party.
Well, he pointed them out. I didn't.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah.
I understand that, and I think he needs to step back and look at, if he wants to have a future in Republican Party politics, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I think he just needs to temper those comments so that he doesn't damage himself for future consideration in other areas. Look at Marv Hagedorn. Marv Hagedorn ran for lieutenant governor. He was a real statesman. and he, the governor appointed him to be the head of the Idaho Department of Veterans Affairs, and rightly so. I mean, Marv has got a tremendous background in veterans work. He's a veteran, has done a great job, and understands the veterans' issues, and so we have a real ally there that's going to help you. So you see those kinds of things, and you know that it's helpful when you take the high road. And most of us who have done both, and I did. There were times in the past where I was real frustrated after an election. Not that I was in, that I was running,
right,
but
Mike.
that
But
I was
as you said,
on.
it's easier said than done. I've got to run, but thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a great 4th.
All right, you as well. Our great friend Mike Tracy coming up. Tea Party Bob and Russell and you. Your reaction to the stabbings? How safe is the Treasure Valley? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Tea Party Bob joins us now at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. How are you today?
Living the dream, and you?
Well, it's a sad day when we have something like this stabbing happen in one of our cities, and we should all be praying for those who are injured. Boise is not the same place it used to be when I moved here 25 years ago, and it is changing by the day. And Chief Bones, for as hard as he works and as much as he does, Boise is one of the safest cities in the country. He says so, but it still doesn't make the top 100, and we have a B-minus rating. And that has nothing to do with him but it's the reality of the change that is taking place in our state. Now, if you told me something like this could happen 10 years ago, I would probably tell you you're nuts, but the city is growing. We have to be aware that we have both the good, the bad, and the ugly moving into Idaho, not just Boise. We have the right to carry firearms in Idaho, and if you don't take the steps to protect yourself, you are at risk of becoming a victim of unacceptable violence. If just one person at that party had a firearm, this incident may have turned out quite differently than it did. Personally, I never go anywhere without a firearm, but you never know when something's going to happen, and you're going to be the only person that has a defense against the perpetrator for yourself or those around you. Now, when I moved here in 1993, we never locked our doors on our house or our cars. Now you have to lock just about everything that you think has value. So take it for someone who lived and worked in New York City for 30 years. You ain't seen nothing yet. Because with unabated growth comes unabated crime, and the risk of living in the more populated areas gets higher each year as the area keeps growing. Just a quick word about the tariffs, my friend Terry. Tariffs are not anything more than a tool to get other countries to negotiate with us. And if he takes a good hard look, we've been at war with the Chinese and European countries for years, and they perpetrated the war. And now the German car manufacturers are actually calling for an end to tariffs on American cars. Did you ever hear of anything like that? Wow. And when it comes to Harley, they planned on this move over a year ago. And the tariffs are only an excuse. They've filled the need of the baby boomers here but they bought their bikes and they're seeking new markets now. For those worrying about the deficit, relax, because the first quarter we had the most tax revenue ever collected, over $1 trillion. So if the economy keeps growing like it is, we will all be in very good shape. Remember, a rising tide raises all ships.
Tea Party Bob, thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Have a good day.
You too. Quickly, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Kevin. KIDO Talk Radio traffic. We continue accident-free, and the freeway is already thinned out nicely. No problems there. Don't forget at State Street, you cannot turn left on Veterans Memorial Parkway. That construction continues. Independence Indoor Shooting is Idaho's premier firearms retailer, indoor shooting range, and training academy. Independence Indoor Shooting, open Monday through Saturday till 9, off Overland and across from the Majestic Theaters, online at iishooting.com. That's your Impact Directory traffic update. I'm Dave Burnett on KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio weather from the Channel 7 First Alert Weather Center. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Kevin. Cooler both today and tomorrow. It will only be 81 today, 77 for tomorrow, but then to the 90s. In fact, by Thursday, 98 degrees, pretty hot, and a little bit of a cool down again for next weekend. I'm just Channel 7's Eric Gebert.
And to Russell, you'll bring us home on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. First of all, I'd like to tell you that I'm so grateful that you've given this community a voice to express our opinions. Thank you very much for that.
Well, it's a privilege, brother.
Well, thank you. Having served outside of the United States, I can tell you that truly we won the lottery of life to be born here. And having witnessed children in other countries being mistreated, it's sad to see that something like this has happened so close to home. I do believe, though, that all people who are here should have the right to defend themselves, because police can take minutes to come to your rescue and your aid, yet it only takes a perpetrator seconds to do irreversible harm. And I do feel that this is not typical of Boise or of Idaho. It's just an evil person that perpetrated this. It was not anything typical that we have in our community.
Good thoughts, Russell. God bless. Ray and Maya, great job. God bless and keep the faith, everyone.